Trump had been set to be sentenced next week for illegally concealing hush money payments to an adult film star. But that was before the U.S. Supreme Court on Monday ruled that former presidents enjoyed immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts taken while in office. And a New York judge on Tuesday agreed to delay Trump's sentencing until September 18th. The change comes after Trump's attorneys argued the Supreme Court's decision means the first former president to be criminally convicted should have his conviction overturned. Prosecutors with Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office said earlier on Tuesday that Trump's argument was, quote, without merit, but agreed to delay the sentencing to give Trump the chance to make his case. In a written ruling, New York Justice Juan Merchan said he would rule on Trump's request by September 6th, with sentencing to follow less than 2 weeks later, should the judge decide to uphold the conviction. Trump's lawyers must submit their arguments by July 10th, and prosecutors face a July 24th deadline to respond. A New York jury found Trump guilty on 34 counts relating to the illegal concealment of payments to Stormy Daniels in an effort to buy her silence about what she says was a sexual affair with the former reality TV star. Trump pleaded not guilty and denies the affair. The sentencing had previously been set for July 11th, just days before the Republican National Convention begins in Milwaukee. The new timeline means Trump will likely have been nominated by his party to challenge Democratic President Joe Biden by the time he is sentenced. Justice Juan Merchan will now decide Trump's punishment, including whether to jail him, in the thick of the general election campaign ahead of the November 5th election. Trump faces an uphill battle getting the hush money conviction overturned, since much of the conduct at issue in the case predated his time in office.
The UN Refugee Agency has said it's expanding its Sudan aid plan to Libya and Uganda after a surge in arrivals. Sudan's 14-month-old war has already created the world's worst displacement crisis, with some 12 million people forced to flee their homes and more than 2 million across borders. On Tuesday, a UNHCR planning document showed the agency expects to receive 149,000 refugees in Libya before the year end and 55,000 in Uganda. UNHCR spokesperson Ewan Watson said most of those arriving in Libya were fleeing Darfur, where ethnic violence has escalated.
It just speaks to the desperate situation and desperate decisions that people are making, that they end up in a place like Libya, which is, of course, extremely difficult for refugees right now.
The arrivals in Libya raise the prospect that refugees may risk the dangerous Mediterranean route to reach Europe. That's a scenario which the UNHCR's chief has already warned about if aid is not provided. The Sudan aid response is suffering from a shortage of resources. That's amid record humanitarian needs due to multiple crises around the world and as some donors retrench due to domestic budget constraints. The latest expansion of the UN response plan brings to 7 the number of African countries taking in large numbers of Sudanese refugees.
Plastic waste litters the shores of this resort town near Manila, the Philippines' sprawling capital. This coastal cleanup crew is trying to hold back the steady flood of waste. But each sack of waste they gather doesn't go unrewarded. They get a 2-pound bag of rice in exchange, enough for a small family's needs. Green campaigners say the exchange can educate the community about why protecting the environment is so critical, all while keeping the shores clean and, as inflation bites, keeping people here, like Janet Acevida, afloat.
Yung pong pagkapalit ko po ng bigas ay napakalaking tulong dahil sa isang buwan ay halos 4 na kalahating kaban. Ngayon po ay 2 na lang ang aking binibili sa laking tulong at tipid ng pagpapalit ng basura. At nakakatulong ito sa ating environment, ika nga. Sa ating kapaligiran at kalinisan ay talaga makikita.
Mabini in Batangas province is a world-class scuba diving destination, known for its vibrant corals and marine biodiversity. But a rising tide of plastic pollution is posing an increasing threat to marine life. Organizer Giulio Indaya has witnessed the harm firsthand.
I've seen sea turtles entangled in nets and other types of plastic. They've been known to eat straws and plastic bags. And the fish also eat microplastics that have been, broken down in the shore. And Recently, we've been finding more and more microplastics even in fish that we eat. So it's also harmful to us.
To untangle the problem, Indaya and his group of volunteers spearheaded the Plastic Balit Bigas, or Plastic in Exchange for Rice program. The project is funded by donations from individuals and small companies that advocate for marine conservation. Through the exchange, Mabini volunteers can turn in sacks of litter, regardless of weight, for a kilogram or 2.2 pounds of rice. Volunteer Raymond Bassett says it's been a potent incentive.
Nakakatulong siya dahil yung mga tao lalong nakaka-urge. Dahil hindi rin natin minsan yung mga ibang tao, yung dala rin ng kahirapan minsan, lalo na sa panahon ngayon, ang mahal natin ang mga bilihin. Nakaka-urge sila na sa kanilang free time, maglinis sila. May mga napupush ang kanilang sarili na maglinis sila dahil meron silang matatanggap na something malaking bagay rin yun sa isang tao.
An updated 2022 University of Oxford report found that the Philippines accounts for 36% of the total global input of plastic waste into the ocean, more than any other country. The Plastic for Rice exchange aims to change that. According to Indaya, since cleanup efforts began in October 2022, more than 4.7 US tons of garbage have been collected in exchange for nearly 3 tons.
Cambodia has sentenced 10 environmental activists to jail for up to 8 years for plotting against the government and insulting the king. That's according to the founder of the activist group, Mother Nature, and a lawyer on Tuesday. The verdict comes amid growing concerns about freedom of expression in the country under Prime Minister Hun Manet. 5 of the defendants were arrested outside the court in capital city Phnom Penh immediately after the verdict, as supporters dressed in white held placards reading "Justice is dead." Activist Ton Rotter.
The court charged us with plotting to overthrow the government, or insulting the king, etc., trying to do whatever to jail us. That is a big mistake, and not only affects the court system, but it affects the new government that has young blood, which we hoped would have democracy, respect human rights, freedom. But on the contrary, it showed us their fierce activity.
Mother Nature has long campaigned against environmental destruction in Cambodia. The group highlights deforestation, illegal sand mining and corruption in development projects. The group's founder, Spanish national Alejandro González Davidson, who was sentenced in absentia, said he was one of 3 charged with infringing Cambodia's lèse-majesté law. He told Reuters that while the accusations of plotting against the state had not been clarified in court, 3 members were arrested after documenting suspected pollution runoff into a river in the capital in 2021. The lèse-majesté charges relate to an internal Zoom meeting about political cartooning that was leaked. New York-based group Human Rights Watch branded the verdict devastating. The Cambodian government has previously denied the trial was politically motivated, saying it did not prosecute critics, only those who commit crimes.
A stampede at a Hindu religious event in northern India on Tuesday has resulted in scores of deaths and more than 24 people injured, according to news agency ANI. A police report seen by Reuters said that the number of people present was more than triple the permitted capacity. The tragedy took place at a village in the Hathras district of Uttar Pradesh state, where 250,000 people attended an event that only had permission for 80,000. Most of the dead were women, along with several children, according to state officials. Kamala says she lost her daughter in the disaster.
My daughter was all right when she arrived at the hospital. In fact, my daughter served water to other victims, helped them, and called my brother, informing us that she had made it to the hospital safely. But by the time my brother reached the hospital, my daughter was dead.
The police report also described a scene of utter chaos when the preacher of the congregation at the event, known as Bole Baba, was leaving his car. The report goes on to say thousands of devotees shouted and ran towards the car, crushing others still sitting in the gathering. Some people also fell into a nearby field of slush and mud and were trampled there. Local media said the event was organised by a group of devotees but did not identify anyone. ANI news agency, in which Reuters has a minority stake, said police were trying to determine the whereabouts of the preacher. Police officials in Hatras were not immediately available for comment.
Hurricane Beryl is breaking records as it tears through the Caribbean. Over the weekend, it became the first Category 4 storm to ever form in the Atlantic in the month of June. On Tuesday, it became the earliest storm on record to reach Category 5, the strongest possible ranking. Scientists say that all points to a very dangerous hurricane season ahead. Hurricane season in the Atlantic Ocean typically lasts from June through November, peaking in late summer. On average, it produces 14 named storms, of which half become hurricanes. But the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has warned of an extraordinary 2024 Atlantic season. We could see up to 25 named storms instead, and 13 hurricanes. Scientists blame record-breaking sea temperatures, driven by human-caused climate change and cyclical weather patterns. A Category 5 is the strongest hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, bringing winds of 157 miles per hour or higher, capable of causing catastrophic damage, including the destruction of homes and infrastructure.
The 2nd of July, we do not normally talk about Category 5 hurricanes in July.
World Meteorological Organization spokesperson Claire Nullis.
So we've got very, very warm waters, and we need to bear in mind that it only takes one landfalling hurricane to set back, decades of development, and we fear what is happening with Hurricane Beryl, which has hit very, very, very small islands in the Caribbean who are not used to this size of hurricane. We fear that this is going to have a major knock on socioeconomic development.
Since 1960, only 30 Atlantic hurricanes have reached Category 5. The most recorded in a single season was 4, and that was in 2005, the year Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans. Beryl is the strongest storm to hit the southeastern Caribbean in 2 decades. It made landfall on small islands in the eastern Caribbean on Monday. It's currently forecast to barrel over the Caribbean island of Jamaica on Wednesday, where it could dump as much as 12 inches of rain, skimming the Dominican Republic and Haiti along the southern coast of the island of Hispaniola.
Opponents of France's national rally stepped up their bid to block the far-right party of Marine Le Pen from power on Tuesday, as more than 200 candidates agreed to pull out of this weekend's runoff election, according to local media reports. The dropouts include those who finished in 3rd place in the first round of voting, and they are quitting the race as part of a strategy to create a Republican front to block the anti-immigrant Eurosceptic party. Le Pen's party came out well ahead in Sunday's first-round vote after President Emmanuel Macron's gamble on a snap election backfired, leaving his centrist camp in a lowly 3rd-place position behind the National Rally and a hastily formed left-wing alliance. Still, it was far from clear National Rally could win the 289 seats needed for a majority, and that was before the coalition maneuvering of the last 24 hours. But National Rally lawmakers, including Laure Lavalette, who won her race in the election's first round, remained confident.
I think that the French are very disappointed with these dealings, these behind-the-scenes dealings, and I am convinced that we will obviously have the absolute majority to be able to truly change the daily lives of the French.
The Republican front approach has worked before, such as in 2002 when voters of all stripes rallied behind Jacques Chirac to defeat Le Pen's father, Jean-Marie, in a presidential contest. However, it is not certain voters these days are willing to follow guidance from political leaders on where to place their vote, while Marine Le Pen's efforts to soften the image of her party has made it less of a pariah.
If you're slightly surprised to see me, I want to be absolutely clear that I was glad when Rishi asked me to help. Of course I couldn't say no. And I'm here for one reason and one reason only, which is the same reason as all of us are here. We're here because we love our country. And whatever our differences, they are utterly trivial by comparison with the disaster we may face if these so-called opinion polls are right.
Isn't it great to have our Conservative family united, my friends? Yeah! Right. Now, Boris is right to say now is the time for all Conservatives to come together to deny Labour that supermajority that Keir Starmer craves. We have 48 hours to save Britain from the danger of a Labour government.
Summer has just started. Already, tens of millions of Americans are under heat warnings from record-shattering temperatures. Ignoring climate change is deadly and dangerous and irresponsible. These climate-fueled extreme weather events don't just affect people's lives, they also cost money, they hurt the economy, and they have a significant negative psychological effect on people. The Inflation Reduction Act, the most significant climate investment ever in the history of the world, anywhere in the world, has already created 300,000 new jobs, building clean energy we need to cut our emissions and to lead the world. Unfortunately, my predecessor and the MAGA Republicans in Congress are trying to undo all this progress. They still deny climate change even exists. They deny climate change even exists. They must be living in a hole somewhere at the expense of health and safety of their own constituents. They deny it exists. Every single congressional Republican voted against the investments which created these jobs and combat climate change. Many of them are trying to repeal those climate provisions and kill those jobs. I quite frankly think it's not only outrageous, it's really stupid. Everyone who willfully denies the impacts of climate change is condemning the American people to a dangerous future, and either is really, really dumb or has some other motive in that. How can you deny there's climate change, for God's sake?